working moms.
Hey, working dads.
Hey, aspiring working parents.
And allies of working parents.
Are you in search of your pillow?
Does it take you 24 hours just to get out the door in the morning?
Are you the family ATM?
Or the family Uber driver?
Are you on a Zoom call for work while carpooling while also watching a practice?
If so, welcome to our world, the Parents at Work podcast.
I'm Lori.
I'm Jason.
We are married.
And we have two wild and crazy redheaded boys.
We're here to shine a light on the roller coaster ride that is working parenthood. I'm a healthcare lawyer and founder of a working parent community called Mindful Return.
And I'm an executive coach with Ready, Set, Launch, LLC. I wrote a cool book called Relationships to Infinity.
And I wrote a cool book called Back to Work After Baby. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Parents at Work podcast. You are seeing a Lori and a Jason who
Hello.
are recently back from vacation.
Amazing.
And we decided that we wanted to spend today's episode talking about traveling with kids, because we know that this is a subject full of ups and downs and fodder and challenges and wonders. Jason, after
Lori.
our
Hello,
couple of
Lori.
weeks away, and
Yes.
for the folks who are listening, we were in France.
Yes.
What are you doing to try to keep a little bit of vacation with you, even though we're back home?
That is a great question, Lori. When I was in Paris and Lyon, and my steps went up. And
Yeah.
so one of the things I'm trying to keep vacation with me, and actually I felt a lot better with all these steps. And so I'm actually intentionally finding ways to walk more during the day so I can have a little bit more of vacation in my day.
Vacation steps.
Gosh, vacation steps. How about you? What are you trying to keep alive after our vacation?
Yeah, so two things come to mind. One, it dawned on me how much I really love reading fiction. And I read a lot, period, but I spend a lot of time reading nonfiction, and often for my work. And historical fiction just makes me really happy. And so I'm keeping the vacation alive by making sure that every day I'm reading a little bit of a novel. The other thing is the bread. Something about the French bread was spectacular, and it's not the same here, but I did go and buy an actual loaf from an actual bakery the other day because I just want to keep that alive. So
These are great things.
they are great.
These are great things. You know, you're such an avid reader. It didn't even dawn on me that you were not reading for fun. And so I'm glad that you are reading for fun.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
There's so many books on the bookshelf. I've lost the.
I do have a book problem. Yeah.
I don't see the difference between fiction or nonfiction. So I'm glad that you've made that distinction.
Awesome. So just to tell all of you in our community a little bit about what we did this summer, I personally was gone for almost 5 weeks. I left in mid-June with our younger son and spent 2 weeks with him on a farm in the central part of France. I have a dear friend who is from Marseille but married a farmer, and so we stayed at her house with her and her husband and our kids. And then Jason and our eldest son met up with us in Paris, and we spent a week in Paris, a week in Lyon, and then we returned to the farm for a couple of days. And Jason left a few days before us to go back to the US because he had a talk to give in New York. So we were sort of coming and going in different pieces. And I want to say at the outset that it is an incredible privilege, and I recognize it as one, to have this much flexibility. I know that not everybody listening has multiple weeks of vacation or can work remotely. I was working remotely from the farm for the 2 weeks that I was there at the beginning. And so we want to just put it out there that we do both work for ourselves, and that gives us the certain amount of flexibility. And while there's a part of me that's like, oh, I'm embarrassed about it, there's another part of me that says, you would not be very smart if you didn't use the flexibility that this entrepreneurial life affords you. So go use it. And I want to say that I'm confident that the topics that we're going to be talking about today with respect to kids and travel at all different ages and stages will hopefully share some nugget with you that you'll be able to take with you regardless of how long you're able to travel or how much time you're able to take off.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something that's really important, whether you're in a PTO system or whether you are working for yourself, to be thoughtful about that time, because we spend so much time at work that I think we can find joy in the time that we're not at work and being thoughtful on how do we want to use that time. So I think you're setting the stage nicely.
I don't know if this is true for you, Jason. I'm curious to hear if it was, but this trip that we took was the first trip with all four of us that actually felt more like a vacation than a trip.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree 100%.
What
was it?
Yeah.
Go ahead. What was it for you that made it a vacation as opposed to a trip?
Well, it was the fact that things went relatively smoothly, that our children could carry their own luggage, that I was able to disconnect and read, and we just weren't so stressed out about what was going to happen next. And I think a couple of things that have helped include, one, pure maturity levels of our kids. Like, they're 13 and 15 now. And the last time we traveled internationally was 2 years ago. They were 11 and 13. And they've come through some like really big mental health struggles. They're on the other side of that now. It's amazing how much even just 2 years of development can help them to progress in terms of maturity. And I think there's something about reps, like getting the reps in. Like, they know how to get on a train. They know how to navigate a metro. They, have more French under their belt. I think that the practice, which we'll talk about, started really young for them, like, is actually building towards some sense of self-sufficiency, which just makes me delighted and also just astonished. What else do you think it is, Jason? What do you think contributed to it feeling like a vacation?
I think this is something that both of them wanted. Both of them actively wanted. Both of them had a voice in what we did. And so I felt there was a level of agency in all of that. And I think what also made it work was that there were certain times during the vacation where all four of us were not together, we broke off 2 and 2. And that allowed for space, and then to come back for dinner. And what did you do? And what did you do? So I think those are some other things that I think contributed to what made it really feel like a very restful, a restful time. And how do you feel? How do you feel now, Lori, reflecting on this rest? What has that meant for you?
My brain slowed down. I got crystal clear on business priorities. I got enough sleep for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And it also like really hit me, I think in part because we were reading Laura Vanderkam's book, Big Time, which we talked about in our last episode, but that I, prior to this, was not taking any breaks in my workday. Like, no intentional breaks, just like zoom to zoom to zoom to zoom to zoom. And that's not healthy. And so I'm recommitting to taking those breaks. I wanted to add one thing to what I think made it feel like a vacation, which was our kids do like the comforts of things that they know. And we went to familiar places. We went to visit friends. We stayed with friends everywhere we went. We didn't stay in any hotels. And I think the fact that we were going to a place where everybody knew what to expect, knew what kinds of things we'd be seeing and eating and that sort of thing, helped it to go a little bit more smoothly as well.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. Familiar places, familiar people.
Yeah.
And I think in that familiarity, it also left a lot for, we didn't have these full agendas each day.
Yeah.
Some were just like broad strokes. And if we do it, great. And if we don't do it, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, we should probably also tell people that the reason that we went to France, in addition to having connections to the country, is that our youngest son had his bar mitzvah this year in February. And we gave him the choice between having a party and celebrating here in DC or taking a trip. And he chose the trip option, which is the opposite of what our eldest son chose. And we asked him where he wanted to go, and he had some ideas, but then ultimately he landed on France. And he said it was because we have friends there, and he wanted to go see the friends, and he wanted to hang out with the cows on the farm. And we told him that because it was his bar mitzvah trip, during the week that we were in Paris, he could pick one thing each day that he wanted to do in Paris. And I think that sort of set the tone for like, oh, okay, we can just pick one thing each day, period, for the whole trip and not worry about cramming everything in.
Yeah.
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 So
that was, no, it was a very good formula.
Yeah.
It was a very good formula.
So, Jason, you and I have travel in our DNA. And for those who don't know, Jason and I met in France on September 11th, 2001. And so we've done the travel thing a lot. I want us to take a little journey back in time on the parenthood timeline to when our kiddos were really small. And let's talk about what we did travel-wise and how we navigated that when they were tiny and then as they were growing. And then we'll get up to the present. But I know a lot of folks who are listening have kids of various ages. So, Jason, you want to tell everybody about sort of our early days of travel with kiddos?
And as you're even describing that, here we're like 13, 15 years out. And I'm just like, oh, that was hard.
Yes, that was really hard.
I was like, as you're even like, that was really hard. The amount of things that we needed, whether it was a car trip, a train trip, or a plane trip, any of those needed a whole host of planning and stuff. All the stuff and the
car
bags,
seats, the travel cribs, and
like all the stuff. But I think, we wanted the boys to meet their family, and we would go to, to Pittsburgh and North Carolina and New Jersey and any of those things, either via car, via train, or to, like, at the time, may they all rest in peace, my grandparents who were in South Florida, we took the kids on planes very early on. And it was really hard. There was that trip we took to the wedding where we drove from DC to North Carolina, and our oldest screamed the entire time.
The entire 8 hours minus like 20 minutes that he fell asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about that trip and about how, and there's one of the very early, maybe the first Ted Lasso episodes, he talks about how when you get smacked down on the soccer field, or the football field as they call it, you have to be a goldfish and forget what just happened and move on. I feel like in the early years of travel with children, you have to be a goldfish. You have to say, I'm going to keep doing it anyway, and I'm just going to forget that thing that just happened.
How did that affect you? I'm curious. How did that affect you early on with all of the, when the kids were younger and all these things that we needed to manage? What was your mindset back then when you said the word, all right, we're going to take a trip?
One, I love to travel. So there was the excitement of it and the seeing something new and taking pictures with the kids so that when they grow up, they can say, oh, I was a baby, on a train in France or whatever. And an exploding mental load. I was the packer of all the things. And,
God bless you.
Like, what do we have to bring to keep this child happy on the trip? One thing that came to mind is when the kids were really little, I would always make sure that they had something new on a plane ride or a big trip that they hadn't played with before or hadn't seen before. And I remember one time we were about to go on a trip and I realized I didn't have anything new. And so I ran over to the CVS and I bought a whole package of those little neon stickers that you use for yard sales. And I bought a little composition book. And we spent a whole airplane ride creating like pictures and images with those fluorescent pink and green and yellow little tabs. And then they were stuck to everything after that trip. But, it sort of got me through. So my headspace in those early years was, and yeah, let's do it anyway. How about you?
Yeah. It's just, well, you were the packer. I was the driver.
Yeah.
And I think this was before we got the minivan. God bless the Honda Accord in its early days. And we didn't have headphones for each of so we would have to play those like kids songs.
And the books on tape, the Little Miss,
the books
and
on
Mr.
tape,
Books. Yeah.
And I would like need breathing exercises.
I enjoyed them.
I'm glad you enjoyed them. I'm glad you enjoyed them. But I think what was funny also is that how we adjusted, certain routes. We wouldn't take certain highways because when the kids were younger, they needed to either go to the bathroom or they needed a snack or whatever. And so even mapping routes, which were even kid friendly, was top of mind. And I was always, even when we were potty training the kids, I'd be asking them every 20 minutes, all right, does anybody need to go to the bathroom?
And we had that little Potet Plus in our trunk that we would whip out and allow them to go to the bathroom on the side of the road. And oh my gosh.
Yeah, the bathroom stops.
Yeah, in the early years, actually the first 2 years of our eldest son's life, we also brought him a lot on my work travel trips. So I would go to a conference or go give a talk somewhere and you would come along. Right. And then before we had to buy the third ticket, we would bring our kiddo. And I know it really helped me to not have to leave him for as many times. Sometimes I did go myself, but sometimes you would come along. And I think it gave you and he a chance to explore different parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was running a remote sales team, so sometimes, I would even be able to meet up with clients and him. I think one of my favorite trips was you had a conference in San Francisco, and he couldn't have been. I took him down to Pier 39, and I was like, "Oh, we're Pier 39. I want to get chowder and a bread bowl." And him being the curious eater, he's like, I want to eat what Daddy's eating. And so I took out just a little bit of soup and put it on top of the bread, and he ate it and his eyes lit up. And the entire time I was with him, more soup, Daddy, more soup. And I think that and the sea lions sealed the deal.
Yeah, we all love San Francisco after that. The other tip that I wanted to share that we got when we had a tiny baby was to travel somewhere that you've been wanting to go that's perhaps a big trip before the kid can walk and terrorize the airplane. And I think that was very wise. We did take a trip to France to see friends when our eldest was 8.5 months, 9 months-ish. And I think that was a really good time to travel in terms of his ability to be curious about the world. And I remember we went to a restaurant in France where he was literally waving at everyone. And we put him in the bassinet and the plane. That wasn't very successful, but we tried. And then we have a picture of him on the train, exactly the same height as a baguette. So, we went and did the thing. And I would say before they can run around, it's a good idea.
The restaurant he was waving around at everybody was at Chez Janou. It was
one of them.
It was one
there
of
was another crepe restaurant too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so, when you were thinking about, way back when we're doing those international trips and you being the planner, what was on your mind then? And as you think about today,
yeah. Let's count out the number of diapers that we think we'll need, and then we'll add a whole bunch. And did I bring enough pouches of whatever food? And are we going to be able to find avocados at the spot? Because that's what he's really eating right now. And do we have enough outfits for our children for all the blowouts? And the one time I did not pack an extra outfit for myself was that time we went to Boston, and our kid just threw up all over me before we were landing, and I didn't
Yep.
have anything to change into. So that was a lesson. Yeah. So yeah, that's sort of where my head was when we were going internationally. The other thing I'll say is so we basically stopped doing a lot of you coming with me on work trips once we had a second child, because there was just no way of bringing two.
It was too much.
But when I was a partner at Denton's, there was a partner retreat at Disney Paris in February one year. So like nobody's at Disney Paris. It's freezing, right? And we thought, wow, our children are 3 and 5 years old. Lori's got this partner meeting to go to. Why don't we turn it into a chance to introduce our 2 kids to our friends in France? And woo, that was a thing. That was a real thing. I mean, at that point, my headspace was, how do I show up as a professional at this partner meeting and fulfill my firm responsibilities and meet people and also be mom to my kids? One of them was turning 3 while we were over there. He now says that one of his 2 earliest memories is being at the top of the Eiffel Tower on a windy day in February. So, it stuck with him. And then you, of course, had to navigate the 2 kids in a city where they did not speak the language. What was that like for you, Jason, while I was off, hanging out with all my adult colleagues?
Well, I think having lived in Paris for 4 years, I don't think I would have done it any other way if I didn't know the city as well as I did.
Mm-hmm.
But yet there were still 3 and 5. And so I didn't realize how many pigeons there were in Paris, because that's all the kids wanted to do. They wanted to chase the pigeons at the Eiffel Tower and chase the pigeons at Notre Dame. And I kept on trying to, to the extent you can explain a 3 and 5-year-old to like look both ways, because like this is Paris, and like, at least in the US, pedestrians have right of way. Over there, it's more interpretive. And so that was really tiring. But it was fun to go for I think this is their first La Durée memory, where I took them to see a friend at La Durée on the Champs-Élysées.
And for those who don't know, this is like a fancy pants tea house macaroon place that is not a place you would typically take a 3 and 5-year-old, let alone a 3 and 5-year-old who happened to be wearing Spider-Man? Was it Spider-Man pajamas?
They were in Spider-Man pajamas.
Yeah.
And so the servers thought it was the funniest thing in the world that I'm bringing both kids in pajamas to a place that's, normally you get dressed up at. And at the end, I mean, the macaroons were a hit. And when we came home for our youngest 3rd birthday, he's like, Daddy, I don't want cupcakes. I want macaroons. So.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
So how did you feel after that trip where you were, partner at a big law firm, brought the family, come home? Oh, and wait a minute. I had...
You got strep throat.
I got strep throat at the end of that trip. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Anyway, how are you doing?
Well, I would say, first of all, that one of the risks of exposing your children to various things is that then they will fall in love with those various things and want them again. And so, the macaroons, or, you take your kids for sushi and they're like, oh, I need more sushi. You're like, oh, this is an expensive habit. I think what I felt at the end of that trip was, we're never going abroad again, ever, as a family. Leave me alone. I'm going to go on my own partner trips. The next 2 retreats, there was one in Canada and one in Mexico. And I was like, nope, peace out. I'm going alone. This is not going to happen. So we took a pause from international travel for, I think it was about 8 years after that.
And I mean, I think as you're talking, and let's stay here for a second, I mean, that's a nice boundary that allows for you to actually, at those retreats, actually be at the retreat.
Yeah, fully present. Exactly. Yeah. And it's a nice hiatus. There are benefits to bringing a kid with you on work travel, and there are benefits to going on work travel all by yourself. Right. And we have a whole episode on work travel that people can go back and refer to. Yes. Work travel for the adult, that is. Yeah.
Yeah, we could put that in the show notes.
Yeah. So we took this hiatus from international travel during this 8-year period. And that also coincided with COVID, so I'm sure that probably prolonged it. But Jason, you want to talk a little bit about sort of our next life phase, which was more driving and domestic travel?
Yeah, I think that when we look at like driving and domestic travel, I think getting the minivan was super useful for a whole host of reasons. But then, like visiting family at Thanksgiving or any of the holidays, we, every fall would have this tradition to go to the Shenandoah. And then I think getting in that rhythm, and still was not easy, for a whole host of reasons. Everybody had their own, especially that one trip where we're coming out of the Shenandoah and both of them vomit at the same time.
Synchronized barfing from the back seat. Yeah. Yeah,
and we had those like
Barf
industrial bags that you would get at a hospital, but I wasn't ready for two at the same time.
Yeah.
But, still, and I think this was, something that we had, I forget how we figured out that you could get the 4th grade pass through the National Park Service if you had a 4th grade in your car. The idea that we would drive across America, and this was like coming out of COVID and lockdown, and that we would block an entire month to do this. I think for both kids, it opened their eyes to America.
Mm-hmm. Mine too. I mean, I'd never driven across the country. I'd wanted to, but I'd never done that as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how vast and how different the different parts of the country are to like, I still have a vision of like driving from Minneapolis to South Dakota and looking at the sunflower fields, miles and miles of sunflower fields. And it was beautiful.
Yeah. And on our way back, I was like, Kansas is the longest state to drive through ever. It was just like miles and miles and miles of fields. Yeah. And for those who are listening, the 4th grade National Parks Pass is called the Every Kid Outdoors Pass. And you can go online and register for it. And it runs from September 1st of your child's 4th grade year all the way through August 31st of the summer following their 4th grade year. And it gives you access to all the National Park Service sites. So even I found out after we were done using it, Jason, that Great Falls, Virginia, for example, there's normally an admissions fee if you want to park in their parking lot, but it's a National Park Service site. You can use your Every Kid Outdoors Pass for that. So not just the big national parks, but even the smaller sites. You can get in free with pass as long as the 4th grader is in the car with you. So it makes them feel really special to know that they are the reason that the whole car gets in for free.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know about for you, but what was interesting as we were driving to all these different cities all across America, we were seeing friends, but sometimes we would see clients or even take a client call. And so that it was amazing, what we could get done when we were even on the road. What was it like for you on that first trip across America?
Yeah. I mean, I was sort of stunned at the idea that we were doing it. We planned 4 weeks on the road. I was so fried from being home during COVID. We were home for 15 straight months with the kids.
Wow.
And I really welcomed the opportunity to see other parts of the world and to get out and about. So I think I was both terrified and excited at the same time. I was worried about how our businesses would continue to, be okay during that time. And like you said, we just took calls from here and there. I think for me, I get less stressed about my business and about my work if I can just do some touch bases and make sure that the inbox isn't exploding and I've got the away messages and I've done all the prep to go. But just like touching base and knowing that things are not exploding is always good. So it was helpful for me not to log off completely and just to keep a little bit of a pulse on things. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. So you were doing some work while we were on the road.
Yeah, and we spent some days where all we did was be on the road, and you hooked us up very nicely with the AT&T Wi-Fi package in the minivan. So basically, we had Wi-Fi from anywhere, and there would be times when I'd drive and you'd take a call, or you'd drive and I'd take a call, and we could be on our laptops and just sort of cruise around. And we did not do the RV camper thing. We just did Airbnbs mostly and some hotels, and it worked out okay. Yeah.
Worked out. It
I feel
worked
like the
out.
minivan is almost like a character in our family story. Like it is it's a member of the family for sure.
Yes.
And then I'll note that we did another fourth grade trip when our younger son got into fourth grade, but that time we didn't drive across the country. He really wanted to go to Yellowstone and Yosemite, and we flew out that time because we had already done the cross country 8,000 however many miles once, and that's not something I really need to do again.
No.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that saved us an entire week.
Yeah. Yeah.
By just being able to fly out and
Mhm.
do the parks and
There's
just
some things you
enjoy.
only need to do once.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, Earlier on in the conversation, Jason, you talked about the fact that while we were in Paris this year, we sort of went in different configurations. Like there was one day when I took Sword of Versailles, Chase wasn't feeling well, and you stayed back with him. Um, what are your thoughts on everybody doing everything all together all the time versus different pair offs and pieces, and how has your thinking about that evolved?
You know, I'm a big fan of family time. But I think I think every family operates differently, but I've become more and more comfortable and almost excited that when we split up in twos, because then each of us gets a chance to spend more time with the other. And I feel like the child feels like they're getting individual attention from one of us that they otherwise wouldn't.
Mhm. And on this
Um,
trip, sorry to interrupt, I
yeah,
just wanted to mention that there are 2 times that stand out in my mind that because we were there with friends, we were able to have 1 kid and the 2 of us, which I thought was really special. Like, there was a night we went out for dinner in Paris with only our youngest and some friends, and then when we were back at the farm, we went on a wine tasting adventure, uh, with our eldest son, who
sure.
got offered wine because he looked old enough to drink, or the person didn't care, whatever. But anyway, and it was special to just have that, like, that 3 of us time too. So not just pairs, but also different configurations.
Yeah. What when you think of that independence, what do you what bubbles up for you?
Mm. Um, so I think practice, being on planes and trains and automobiles throughout the years, has made us all more comfortable. And I think it was last year, so our kids were 12 and 14, when we put them on planes for the first time all by themselves, right? So, our eldest took a trip on a plane. We put him on the plane and he went. And our youngest, we put him on a plane and he went. They were both domestic flights. But I feel like there's a sense of independence and empowerment that comes with that, um, that made me feel a lot more comfortable that they knew how to race through an airport with their luggage, and they knew how to look under the seat in front of them and make sure they didn't leave anything behind, because we've done that too. We've left electronic equipment on airplanes before.
Yes.
Mhm. And someone found it and returned it, and that was glorious. But I think our kids are getting more used to the idea that they know how to manage themselves when they're traveling. There was a point in time when our 15-year-old grabbed my phone in Paris and was displeased with how quickly I was figuring out how to get wherever. And so he just figured it out. And we followed him, and he took all the right metros and buses and everything and got us to where we needed to go. It was really glorious to watch him do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems all the reps now the kids are taking the reins
Mhm.
at certain
Mhm.
moments.
Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to just pause and reflect on for a moment is in our house, in our world, Jason, you are medicine man. And I'm grateful to you for that, having continued on this trip. You want to tell us a little bit about navigating medical situations while you're traveling?
Yeah, in the division of labor, I'm medicine man. So I'm on first name basis with our pharmacists, all the things,
The front
counting
desk
out the,
people at the pediatricians. Yeah.
yes, I am. I do the appointments. I'm medicine man. And so I think coming into this trip, and not surprised, um, both of the boys at different parts of the trip they were under the weather. Our oldest had a low grade fever. Our youngest had so many bug bites. It was amazing about French mosquitoes and whatnot.
They were
And
getting
so,
infected. It was bad.
yes, yeah, it was bad. So I was like, all right, uh, I'm medicine man, and I'd lived in France for 5 years. I don't need to go to Versailles and I think one of the interesting things about France is that, yeah, they do have urgent care, but there's like a step before urgent care. Most French people have a really great relationship with their pharmacist. You go to the pharmacist and you talk to the pharmacist and you let them know what you have, and they're very well trained, and they give you things. And so I was like, all right, let me go to the pharmacist. And yeah, there was a day where our oldest had a low grade fever, and I stayed home with him, or stayed back while you guys went. And when our youngest had to have his bug bites looked at, I was like, oh, we need to go to the pharmacy. And my first question was, where's the 24/7 pharmacy? And we found it. And I think it's just one of those things where if you're traveling with kids of any age, to just recognize that somebody's gonna need some type of care, and that's just part of the trip. So,
And knowing how to get it before you go is always helpful too. Like just researching what would you do if the kid got a fever or whatever. Yeah. So I think what this leads me to ask is, I mean, we've talked about the kids getting sick and synchronized barfing. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Jason, is the travel experience worth all the pain and agony and planning and all the stuff? And if so, why? Or why not?
I think unequivocally the juice is worth the squeeze. I think you need to go through more pain in the beginning.
Yeah.
A lot more pain, where the fruit is not ready to deliver anything. And those early years, you're asking, like, why the hell am I doing this? I could have experienced the same level of pain at home.
Yes, exactly.
And I had that in my head. I'm like, we just went to a national park for the weekend, and that was just like agony. And I think the real juice that's coming out is you get to see your kids interact out in the universe, whether it's domestically or internationally, and they have an entirely different perspective on things. They have a complete appreciation for things. And, in the trip across America, the boys are like, oh, wow, didn't realize, how big Montana is.
Or the fact that hamburgers are so prevalent everywhere out here. Yeah.
Yeah. The one of the first trips we did to France, and our oldest was like, oh my God, they have pizza in Paris. And
shocking.
but then to come home and then explain, you've been listening like I have, our kids explaining what they did and what was interesting to them and their perspective. I think it's totally worth the squeeze, because they see a different way of doing things. And I think it's integrated in them, and them appreciating, wow, these are some really great things about the US. And, oh, wow, they do this differently over here. So how about you? What's been your perspective on this? Has the juice been worth the squeeze?
Yes, and I think obviously we're a bit biased in that regard because we keep doing it. We keep going back, and we've sort of had this tradition now for the past 4 or 5 years of taking a couple weeks over the summer to like step back and think different thoughts. And it's worth the squeeze for me independently of my children being there. Like just for me to see different things. Really small and silly example, but we were staying on this farm in France with my friend, and turns out they have a Bosch dishwasher, just like we have a Bosch dishwasher, but they were using it in a way that I had never seen before. Like the top rack where you put the silverware and stuff, like there's a thing that slides over and makes the wine glasses be able to, whatever. I was like, wow, this is just a different way of looking at the world. And I think that you get that when you leave your house. I know I'm guilty of having sort of isolated myself and working from home for a number of years, and I don't get out as much. So I think this provides me an opportunity to feel bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and see something new. I also really love watching our kids acquire another language. So I mentioned earlier we were at the farm at the beginning of the trip and at the end. And at the beginning of the trip, I have a little video clip where our youngest was asking me, Mommy, what is he saying? The little boy who was in the family. What is he saying? What is he saying? And by the end of the trip, he knew exactly what the little kid was saying because he learned the little kid's phrases and language and whatnot. And so it just is sort of heartwarming for me to watch them gain it and also to let me practice. I really loved practicing my French. I read a novel in French while I was there. It was just really rewarding for me too. So
you sound energized.
Yes, in fact. And I know one of the things that energized you, Jason, was the celebrity baguette search. So why don't you tell everybody about that thing that energized you on our trip?
Well, having lived abroad, I think I'm just fascinated by cultural differences. And when I had read something earlier this year that a Sri Lankan had won the best baguette in Paris. So every year there's a baguette contest, and whoever wins best baguette for an entire year can be the supplier of baguettes to the prime minister at the Élysée Paris, at the Élysée Palace in Paris. So it's like, oh my gosh. And I had done my MBA summer internship in Sri Lanka. So I'm like, my eyes were like, oh my God, how cool would it be to go to this bakery that's won best baguette, and, we could even, eat sandwiches there. So we, take the family there and, letting them know that we've come specifically to this particular place. And then the woman asking, would you like to meet the baker? And he came out and was able to talk to us. And, we asked him, what was it? And I think, it's funny. He was very deferential, but you could see that like it's a craft that he worked at. And like to be able for the kids to taste, like, here's a great baguette, and it wasn't even made by somebody that's French.
Yeah,
it's someone that came from a Sri Lankan guy that came to France, opened up a bakery, and just kept on working at it. And so I think having that perspective, and we were able to taste what a great baguette tastes like. And I mean, all baguettes are great, but this one.
No, not all baguettes are great. I've had some in the U.S. that are quite lousy, but all French baguettes are great.
Yeah. But like, how funny is it that we're like in the 14th arrondissement, in a very residential area. It's not a touristy place at all. And we're there because we want to see what this person did. So,
indeed.
So that was pretty special.
Yeah.
That was pretty special.
It was. It's a good trip, Jason. I was just going to share one other thing that I think really hit both of us, which is our kids' ability now to relate things that they've seen when we travel to what they're learning in school. Like I remember we took a trip down to Williamsburg to stay with some friends for a couple of days. And we saw the governor's palace in Williamsburg. And Sawyer goes, oh my gosh, that's the thing in the video I watched in class. And we took a tour of it. And then he saw the real thing. And, we were at the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Lyon. And, they were amused by the naked statues, but they were also reflecting on the Egyptian history lessons that they did and the Greek history. And, they saw art and saw artifacts that connected directly to what they had learned. So that was pretty cool too.
And when you think of the amount of time that we've put into school and thinking about school and reflecting on that, what do you think that means for you as, if I'm medicine man,
I'm
if you're a school mom,
well,
you're in the division of labor, you're much better student than I ever could have been.
Well, I'm also, just so everyone knows, my nickname within the family is Grammar. So like I do pay a lot of attention to words and grammar and things like that. But
Yes.
it was so fun for me to see that the education that they're getting is not just a worksheet and video related experience, but they were able to connect it to something real. And I think that's only going to make them more excited to go back and to, keep learning. One of our kids has a summer project this year where he had to choose a book from a list and then read it. And he selected The Count of Monte Cristo. Now, The Count of Monte Cristo takes place off the coast of southern France and in the southern part of France. And so I think he feels more connected to this 1,000-page book because he can sort of picture, he hasn't been to Marseille yet, but he has some felt connection to a place. So I'm excited. And he's making me read it with him. So that has actually been quite fun. I don't mind being forced to read a novel with my kid.
So clearly in a lot of different ways, as we're reflecting on travel throughout the years, this particular trip far exceeded expectations to go from trip to actual vacation.
Mm-hmm.
As you're sitting with that, what does that mean for you and what the investment that you've put into this?
Yeah. More of this, please. I definitely want to do it again. I really am focused right now on trying to maintain things about the sense of equilibrium that I felt, even in my day-to-day. I know life is going to get crazy and wild here in the fall with school starting and all of those things, but I just want to keep incorporating on a daily basis some of the ways that we were able to calm down. I know we're getting to the end here, and I do want to wrap up with a funny story and or joke. And I'm going to go with a funny story. We were on one of our last days on the farm, and we heard some shouting, and it turns out that some of the cows had gotten loose. And the mother-in-law of my friend had run over and said, "They're eating my grass." And there were 5 or 6 cows who had just eaten their way through the barrier that they were meant to be behind and were delighting in the greenery of the grass and the yard. And it was fun to be part of an expedition to get the cows back into the pasture. And ultimately we wound up parking a car in front of the gate to keep the gate from opening. So it was just a whole scene that was hilarious and would never have happened in Washington, D.C. So
very true.
There you go. Any last story you want to tell, Jason?
I think what is so interesting specifically about this trip is both of the kids' relationship to the Champs-Élysées, and how they're like, oh, well, we need to go here because that's where we have to get French toast. And, this place that we'd started with them in pajamas, and now they're sitting down like young adults and
using forks and knives,
using forks and knives and having opinions. And I think it's really, I see the confidence in them and how they show up. So instead of funny, I'd just choose pride. So
yeah, that's awesome. I hope that this conversation inspires those of you who are listening to have hope that your children, if they are small, will evolve into creatures who can do more and travel more easily. I know for me, given how ridiculously hard some of the past years were for us, both with the kid mental health challenges and me having cancer last year, this trip was a really amazing reset and a nice chance to remember that there can be calm, steady times in life too. So that's something I am hoping for more of in the future.
Hail to a nice reset.
Exactly. All right, everybody, it's a pleasure to be with you again, to be back in the U.S. We'll be coming to you with thoughts about back to school on our next episode. So stay tuned, and we'll see you again soon. You got this.
You got this. Thanks.